Every bending art that you have ever watched on screen has a shadow version of itself that the masters quietly agreed to bury. Each of these techniques displayed the dark side of each element, and each of them brought out the worst in their users, and in the hands of somebody who wasn't prepared, it could turn them evil. One of them was so bad that the law was even changed to ban this form of elemental bending forever. So hit that subscribe button, and today we're going to break down the forbidden bending techniques of each of the 4 elements. Usually bending gets presented to us as an art form, with kids learning stances in courtyards while their masters corrected their footwork. But lurking in the shadows is that every one of those 4 disciplines has an application that the person who discovered it decided to never teach again. So to start off, we have the forbidden airbending technique of suffocation. The airbending version is the one that genuinely shocked people when it happened, because for years the fandom had speculated about it, and then came the episode Long Live the Queen, the 10th episode of Season 3 of The Legend of Korra, where Zahir, the leader of the Red Lotus, is standing in the throne room of Ba Sing Se with Earth Queen Hu Ting backed up against her own throne. She tells him that he would not dare attack a queen like her, but he tells her that he does not believe in queens, and then he pulls the air straight out of her lungs and holds it into a sphere around her head so that she can't draw any of it back in. He keeps talking to her about the nature of freedom while she suffocates in front of him. It is by a wide margin the most graphic death in the franchise ever put to screen, and Zahir reaches for the same technique again in the Book 3 finale when he goes after Korra herself. And here's what makes airbending's dark side different from the other 3. There was never a law directly against this technique, and there was never a formal ban. But that's because the air nomads built their entire civilization around the idea that you do not harm a living being in the first place. So there never needed to be a law. It was just so ingrained into air nomad culture that you should never do this that they never had to make a law about it. Tenzin also passes that teaching down to his own students in the same season, telling them that an airbender does not attack an opponent who cannot defend themselves. The technique was never outlawed for the same reason that nobody bothers outlawing something that the whole culture already considers unthinkable. Now, the even scarier part about this is that this is likely the same technique, or at least very similar to what Monk Gyatso used in his final stand against the firebenders at the Southern Air Temple. We have quite a lot of evidence, including the bodies stacked up around him, the lack of burn marks, that show us that Monk Gyatso actually pulled the air out of the room, suffocating everybody inside it and putting out all of the flames of the firebenders, but including himself. He took the air out of the room, killing everybody there, but also taking himself. If you want to see my video on this technique, check out the video on screen now. And then we move to the water forbidden technique, being bloodbending. Bloodbending is the only forbidden technique in the entire franchise that actually got legislated against, and that alone should tell you how seriously the world took it. The origin comes from the Puppet Master, the 8th chapter of Book 3 of Avatar: The Last Airbender. Hama, a waterbender from the Southern Water Tribe, is captured during the Fire Nation's raids and thrown into a prison built specifically to keep waterbenders away from anything that they could possibly use. Sitting in that cell over years of captivity, she works out the thing that nobody in her tribe had ever thought to look for before, which is that water does not only exist inside of oceans and rivers, it exists inside every living creature that walks past her cell door. She practices on rats first, then on guards, and she walks out of that prison a free woman by bending every guard inside to unlock her own cell for her. The original conditions that this technique could be used were very strict. Hama teaches Katara that bloodbending only works under a full moon, when a waterbender's power is at its absolute peak, and that limitation is the only thing keeping the technique from being an everyday weapon in the Avatar universe. Katara though learns it in a single terrifying night, uses it against Hama herself to save her friends, and then swears off it completely. She reaches for it exactly once more in the Southern Raiders when she has the man who killed her mother standing right in front of her in the rain, but using her better judgment, she does not use it, and she does not kill that man. And then the Legend of Korra removes that safety catch. Yukon, a Republic City crime boss whose trial is shown to us as a flashback in Out of the Past, could bloodbend in broad daylight with no moon anywhere in the sky. This ultra-potent bloodbending ability also passes on to his sons, one as Councilman Tarlok of the Republic City Council, and the other as the masked equalist revolutionary Aman. And it is Aman that is able to use this forbidden technique to take away the bending of others by cutting off the chi paths deep within their bodies, basically severing their connection to their element. Now, the tragic thing is, for it to actually have been learned by Aman, of course, and by his father, that unfortunately means that Katara did have to use it sometime later in her life, somewhere in public and somewhere where Yukon was able to see it, which then led him to learning it and passing it down to his sons. Now, why it was forbidden by the waterbending masters comes down to one very simple thing. Every other form of combat in this world leaves you the option of resisting, blocking or running. Bloodbending, though, takes your body away from you while you are still awake inside of it, and the person doing it can make you kneel, drop your weapon, or even walk off a cliff. Aang outlawed it after the 100-Year War, and he personally used energy bending to strip Yukon of his ability entirely, a punishment he handed out to almost nobody else, literally only Ozai. And that leads us to the earth technique, bone bending. The mechanics of bone bending do hold up under every rule that the world of Avatar has established. Toph invents metal bending in the Book 2 finale of The Last Airbender by finding the tiny fragments of unrefined earth still trapped inside of a metal box and pulling on those instead. And the series goes on to establish lava bending, sand bending, and even crystal bending on top of that. What that tells you is that an earthbender reaches for minerals wherever those minerals happen to be sitting, and there's a skeleton worth of them inside of every person standing in front of them. Now, the trail leads us to one man. In the Kyoshi novels, we meet a man called Lao Ge, and he goes by the name Tigwe the Immortal, an Earth Kingdom assassin who has been operating for so long that the underworld genuinely believes that he is 200 years old. He takes a teenage Kyoshi as a student and teaches her two things. The first is how to kill a person, and the second is a practice he calls earthbending immortality, built on the idea that the body decays at the smallest and most invisible levels, and that anyone who keeps a constant inventory of their own internal parts and puts each one back into order can hold that decay off indefinitely. Kyoshi, using this absolutely microscopic earthbending technique, went on to live for 230 years. Now, think about that very carefully, because this is Tigwe the Immortal describing conscious, deliberate control over the material inside of a human body. He is doing it to preserve his own body and teaching it to Kyoshi, but nothing about the technique requires that the body in question be your own. And that is why the legendary earthbending masters refused to document it anywhere and absolutely forbade anyone from using it either to extend their own life or to control the blood of another's by bending the microscopic earth fragments within the iron fragments within the blood cells of the human body. If you want to see my video on this technique, check out the video on screen now. And that leads us to the final firebending forbidden technique, being boiling and heat theft. Firebending's forbidden applications run in two opposite directions, and the world has watched a Fire Lord perform the groundwork for both. Let's start with heat theft. In The Avatar and the Fire Lord, the 6th chapter of Book 3, we watch a young Fire Lord Sozin stand in front of an erupting volcano and pull the heat directly out of the lava, drawing it in through one hand, moving it through his body, and releasing it out the other side. It runs on almost exactly the same principle as the lightning redirection that Iroh explains to Zuko in Bitter Work. Sozin is cooling molten rock by taking its energy away from it, and the implication that nobody ever says out loud is that a firebender who can do that to a volcano can also do it to a person standing right in front of them. Now, the other direction is heating from the inside. In the Sun Warriors, they reframe the entire discipline in the Firebending Masters by teaching that fire is energy and life rather than rage and destruction, and the smaller demonstrations throughout the series back that up, from Iroh warming his tea with a breath to Zuko heating the water around himself underwater, also using his fire breath. Once you accept that a firebender can also manipulate heat rather than just producing flames, boiling a person alive either from the inside or the outside becomes an obvious extension, and a human being does not need to reach boiling point to die. Just a few degrees above the body temperature will do it. And because of this, the fire sages made this absolutely forbidden from anybody to even dare speak about. The nearest documented relative to this technique is combustion bending, used by the assassin known as Combustion Man and later by Plea of the Red Lotus, which is functionally the ability to detonate a target with a thought. Both of them were treated as monsters even by the standards of a nation that had spent 100 years at war. And those are the main forbidden techniques of all of the 4 elements. Thanks so much for watching. If you want to know more about forbidden bending techniques, deep and ancient Avatar lore, and of course news about all of the new Avatar movies, hit that subscribe button, leave a like down below, and if you made it this far, drop a thank Mr. Aang in the comments down below.